If you're not afraid of getting banned for 8,000 years, you could get a leaked version of Forza Horizon 6 that seems to be DRM free, and people are already posting benchmark results. There's also a new AMD GPU potentially incoming. This is a leak from videocards.com. We've got tons of other stories to talk about today. You can check out the chapters and all that if there's particular stories you're interested in. Let's start with this. So Forza Horizon 6 has somehow leaked out. Now, there's different opinions on what happened. Was it a Steam leak that accidentally put out a DRM-free version in the pre-download? The developers denied that as being the reason, from what I understand, but they have confirmed that the leak is out there. But they have said they are issuing hardware bans for the entire franchise, not even just this game, and the bans seem to be going until the year 9999. So watch out if you're tempted to download this. However, some people have, and they have leaked some benchmark results. Now, this one is on a 9070 XT and 9800X 3D, so we can be pretty sure we're not CPU limited here. 4K output, however, using FSR 4.1.0. So first of all, confirming that that's in the game and working at launch, and it's at the equilibrado. I probably mispronounced that. That would be equivalent to the balanced preset. So obviously this user is not set to English, but that is FSR 4 balanced on a 4K output. And the graphics settings they seem to be using are equivalent to the extreme preset, also with extreme ray tracing turned on, because if you want a tracado de rayos, then you can. And there's global illumination as well as there being, it seems to be, reflections. So this is maxed ray traced reflections, maxed ray traced global illumination, and seems to be max settings on everything else as far as I can tell. And they're averaging 63 FPS. Now, that's 4K output with balanced level upscaling, which honestly performs pretty similarly in most games to a native 1440p. So because while balance level upscaling is a bit lower than 1440p internal res, you then have the upscaling overhead, whereas running at native 1440p is a higher resolution but without the upscaling overhead. So I would say that this would probably be pretty close to what you would get from 1440p native resolution, no upscaling at maximum settings, including maximum ray tracing, which on a 9070 XT, I think is a pretty good sign, because you could also turn down ray tracing or turn off ray tracing and probably get some pretty significant performance boosts. So this kind of info is out there. I do plan on benchmarking this game, and it looks like I was able to secure review access, so I can get some review content out. I think the embargo is the 14th, which is the day before the early access for like the expensive version of the game comes out. So the point is, expect some benchmark content from me officially. I haven't got that done yet, so I can't even confirm if this is what I'd get. Not that I'd be allowed to anyway. But there's some benchmarks already leaking out there, guys. Now, if you're planning to upgrade your GPU, you should check out Jawa.gg. The used market has way better deals than the new market right now. For example, if you were looking at the new market and you wanted to buy something, even like if RTX 5060, they start at $350-ish and go up from there. It's a crazy time right now. However, if you check out a relative performance chart, older GPUs like the 3060 Ti reach 90% of the performance of a 5060, and yet you can find them on Jawa.gg for barely over $200. So you can get significantly more performance per dollar out of the used market checking out Jawa.gg. I can also save you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10, and a huge thank you to Jawa for sponsoring this part of today's video. You can also get entire pre-built systems. You can find exactly what you're looking for with the PC Finder. You can target specific performance in specific games at specific resolutions, specific price points. You can even shop by theme to make sure it matches your room. And also, you can sell your old hardware to fund your upgrade. You can take the maximum convenience option by clicking the Get an Instant Offer button to sell your GPU or CPU to Jawa directly. Get an instant offer today, but you could also take the maximum customizability route, create your own listing, become a Jawa seller, set your own price. And it could even be a side business, selling PCs, all of that. There's tons of great reviews. And again, check the sponsored link in the video description and or pinned comment. Now, speaking of GPUs, let's talk about this leaked RX 9050 from AMD. Again, videocards.com is leaking this. Now, it's not them reporting on somebody else's leak. This is their leak. So when we're judging leaks, we have to go by the track record of the leaker, as well as just kind of the smell test on, does this seem reasonable? Does this make sense? Now, I'm going to give a kind of a split decision on this one. First of all, the track record of the source. While videocards.com reports on all sorts of leaks, they're often reporting on leaks from other people, and they are just giving a news article about somebody else's leak. But on the rare occasion where videocards.com says that they have their own exclusive information, they usually are citing it coming from a board partner, which is what they're saying here, from one of AMD's AIBs. And in the past, when VideoCards has done this, citing their own sources within board partners, they've generally had very good accuracy. So from the track record standpoint, I would rate this very highly. However, from the smell test standpoint, I would say that there's something weird about this. That doesn't mean it's not possible, because AMD does weird things sometimes, but there is something weird about this. The weird thing is the RX 9050 is rumored to have 2048 cores, which matches the 9060 XT, but here's the weird part. It's more than on the 9060. Now you might be like, wait, there's a 9060 non-XT? Yes, it's for pre-built systems only. They're not sold as individual products, but the 9060 does exist already. So there's already a GPU below the 9060 XT, and it uses fewer than 2048 cores. So that makes this a really strange thing, that you would have a lower classed product using more cores than one that is above it in the tier list. However, this rumored RX 9050 does have significantly lower clock speeds. So the only way that this could make sense to me then, if it's real, is that if this is targeting a very low power target, because having more cores running at a lower power is generally more energy efficient on most GPU architectures that I'm aware of than running fewer cores, but giving like each core more power, if that makes sense. So having more cores from that standpoint could make sense. It could also just be that they have some extra GPU dies that have the full 2048 cores, so maybe might as well use them, but then clock them lower to be a distinct product. It also looks like it's gonna have lower memory bandwidth. I think due to having, I guess it would be slower VRAM or something like that. So here's how it looks in the product stack. Again, this is rumored according to videocards.com. They put the 9050 as a Navi 44 die with 2048 cores. Again, that is more than on the 9060, which is 1792, and it would match the 9060 XT versions. However, its boost clocks would be at 2.6, compared to 2.99 on the 9060 and 3.13 on the 9060 XT. It would still be an 8 gigabyte GPU, and it would have lower memory bandwidth than the 9060 XT because the memory itself must be running at a lower speed because it still has a 128-bit bus. So it would match the memory bandwidth of the 9060 non-XT version. And again, the board power target is not listed. So if this was targeting super low power target, I guess that's where that could make sense. But like I said, this is the part of the smell test that just seems a bit weird. Having the same number of cores as a higher tier GPU and more cores than a different higher tier GPU seems weird. Now, if this is maybe again also for pre-built systems, I could see this maybe making sense if somebody wanted to make a pre-built system that's targeting a really low power target. Maybe they want to cheap out on the power supply. I doubt they would go so low in power that you could even power it just off the PCIe slot. I don't think that would be realistic given the power target for like a 9060, so I don't think they can cut it that far. But either way, I mean, maybe this could even work as a low profile card because you wouldn't need a lot of cooling. So there's some world where perhaps this makes sense, but that seems strange. But again, they're saying one of AMD's AIBs did give them this information, and videocards.com does have a good track record when that is the case. For me, would it be interesting? Just kind of depends on what price does it hit, and is it available on the DIY market, or is it just a pre-built system kind of thing? Now, in Nvidia news on are there new Nvidia GPUs coming? Seems like they're also going to be firing back with a lower budget card, but it seems to be the 3060 12GB coming back again, with cards from colorful Asus, MSI, and Galax reportedly returning in July. This is not the first time we've heard these types of rumors. This is coming from board channels. I found it at videocards.com. All my sources will be linked in the video description as always. But we've seen mega-size GPU way back in April 16th already noting a June release they had for a 3060. This is now July, so maybe the dates are changing, but there have already been rumors of more 3060 production incoming. Also remember that Nvidia did recently launch another GPU, but this was on the laptop side of things. It was a 5070 12GB. Remember, the normal 5070 laptop card only has 8GB, so it's nice to get the additional gigabytes. Now, you can't really buy laptop GPUs separately to upgrade unless you have a framework laptop, which do allow some modularity on that. However, unfortunately, the 5070 12GB module costs $1,200, 70% more than the 8GB model. So it's kind of cool that they offer these kinds of upgrades, but at a price like that, it's like you might as well just buy a new laptop? I don't know, guys. Now, in other GPU news on the Nvidia side, Asus is reportedly cutting RTX 5070 Ti supply as 5080 gets more production focus. Now, the 5070 Ti has already been in extremely scarce supply, so it seems like the 5070 Ti already had been cut and might be cut even further, and they may be focusing on specific mainstream models, so probably cutting down how many models that they're producing on the different coolers. Now, on the console side of things, Nintendo stock has cratered an additional 12%. It had already been on a downward spiral after they announced a Switch 2 price hike and a bleak fiscal year 27 forecast. Now, this is interesting because a lot of people believe that the reason they announced a Switch 2 price hike was because their stocks were tumbling and they felt like investors were calling for a price hike. And yet, as soon as they announced the price hike, the stock cratered. So there's that. Now, how bad is the price hike? It looks like in the US, it's going to go from $450 up to $500. Canada is going to go from $630 to $680. Europe, it'll go from $470 to $500. And then in it looks like in yen, it's going to go from about 50,000 to about 60,000 yen. So that is certainly a price hike, but not as dramatic as we've seen from other consoles. Like PlayStation, I think, recently raised the price a little more significantly than that. Xbox has been doing price hikes over the last, feels like, year or two now, initially due to tariffs, but then even more after component prices went up and all of that. So looking kind of rough. That being said, the Switch 2 has reached almost 20 million units sold. PS5, for comparison, has reached nearly 94 million consoles sold. And we're getting towards the next PlayStation generation. And it's sounding like the PS6 launch timing is still undecided, according to a financial call for the company. And that's where they're not really allowed to lie to investors. So it sounds like they're really just not sure about the PS6 launch timing, because ideally they could wait until the components are priced lower, things settle down, and they could launch at a more attractive price. But they don't want to just indefinitely delay it. So at some point you kind of have to just launch, even if prices haven't come back down. So it looks like they still haven't quite decided on when they're going to launch it, and kind of keep an eye on those memory shortages. Also, Sony marked down a huge loss for Bungie due to, it looks like Marathon is not performing super well. Destiny 2 has kind of been winding down. So they paid a lot of money for Bungie. I can't remember. I think it was somewhere between like $3 and $4 billion or something like that. So they're devaluing that asset on their books. because it looks like Bungie is not producing the value that they thought it would when purchasing it for that price. Now, also in Sony news, in my previous news video a week or so ago, I had mentioned that there was signs of PlayStation implementing a new kind of DRM on some of their digital downloads, where it seemed like you would need to check in once every 30 days online to be able to continue accessing the game. However, it looks like Sony has commented and said you only need a one-time online check and would not need to keep doing it every 30 days. So that's good news because, yeah, that would be really obnoxious if you did have to check in every 30 days to keep playing a game that you already paid for. Now, on the PC manufacturing side of things, it looks like there's been a planning to be even more massive decline in motherboard shipments. They're already down due to low consumer demand because not a lot of people building a new PC if RAM prices are insane. So why would I be buying a new motherboard? Now, AMD has also warned that their PC and gaming demand will decline in the second half of the year, again, due to memory price surge squeezing consumers out of the market. So overall, things aren't looking amazing on that front. However, AMD, the company, is still making tons of money, specifically on CPUs. So with AI, initially we saw the big crunch on GPUs and then memory, and then it went into SSDs because all of that's used in the data centers. But the new growing use of agentic AI, where the AI agents can then often do tasks that require more CPU usage, not just running like AI inference on the GPU itself, but your AI agent could then be like using a PC and doing PC stuff with programs and whatnot, as I understand it. I'm not an agentic AI expert, but they could end up using CPUs quite a bit. So if you're running this, basically, the point is you could end up selling a bunch of server CPUs. So CPUs could be the next thing that we see the prices soar on. But either way, AMD is certainly making a bunch more money on selling server CPUs. They've doubled their forecast up to $120 billion. Again, thanks to the agentic AI exploding here. Now, in other PC hardware news, the Steam controller instantly sold out, but they have implemented a reservation system to help combat scalpers. Now, there's a lot of signs that they're going to be implementing a similar system when the Steam machine launches, where you can probably create a reservation system, and hopefully that can cut down on the scalping situation. Now, as far as I can tell, this is not like an official statement from Valve. It's more based on looking into stuff within the Steam database, which is also indicating that there's probably 4 versions or 4 bundle deals that'll go on sale with the product. And that's also a sign that this could be coming soon. They had announced, I believe, first half of the year for the Steam machine, and to my knowledge, Valve has not changed that target publicly. So we're getting near the end of the first half, and they did just launch the Steam controller, so maybe that means they're gearing up to actually launch the Steam machine, despite the fact that memory prices and SSD prices probably mean it's not going to be at a super attractive price. Now, speaking of memory, as DDR5 prices are still insanely high, that's not stopping them from starting development on DDR6, where it looks like Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron are heading towards a 2028 to 2029 commercial launch of DDR6. And that would also, in my opinion, probably coincide with when it would make sense to have like a big CPU platform revision. So like, how long will AMD keep supporting, the AM5 platform with their CPUs without requiring a new motherboard? Well, to me, it would make sense that once you could launch with DDR6 RAM on a new motherboard with a new CPU, that might be a time where it would make sense to offer, switch over to a new platform with people kind of being understanding of that rather than complaining about it, right? Well, I mean, people will still complain no matter what. But anyway, so that's just me kind of interpreting what that might also mean. So maybe that's about when we'd see that kind of a switch as well. Now, The discussion around DLSS 5 and just general AI use in games is continuing. There was an interesting question given to the Resident Evil Requiem producer asking about DLSS 5, because a lot of the most controversial images with DLSS 5 were from this game, and how a lot of players, a lot of commenters felt like it changed the character of Grace quite a bit. It kind of didn't fit where she was at in the story so much, when it appeared, at least, that she was kind of more studio lit with makeup and things like that, compared to the original character art. Now, he's implied in his comments, without really saying anything bad about DLSS 5 or anything like that, he's kind of implied that this is a sign that her design is resonating with players and taking it as like, well, they really seem to appreciate the artist's intent on her design. He actually says, the exact quote, "The fact a lot of players commented they really liked the original design of Grace and didn't want to see it changed was a positive. It meant we got the design right, and points to the fact that Grace quickly established herself as a fan favorite, that people had such strong opinions on her design." Anyway, so I thought that was at least an interesting comment from those developers there. Now, speaking of the DLSS 5 topic and what gamers prefer, it is interesting to try to get an idea of what do people really think about it. And techpowerup did that by surveying their users. I guess I could have given a flashbang warning. Sorry, it's a bright white background. But they surveyed their users. Now, keep in mind that that means they're surveying extreme enthusiasts in the PC gaming space, which is very different than the general public, because that's just how same thing would happen if I survey my viewers. Like, the average gamer is not on sites like techpowerup or watching videos like mine. So among this extremely enthusiast audience, it looks like 58% said that AI shouldn't be altering games as the most common response. The next up was at 28%, saying they need to see real game results to make up a decision rather than just these previews that we've seen. 6% say they'd like DLSS 5 if it boosts FPS, but by the sound of it, sounds like it's going to be a lot slower than running the game natively, because you have to pretty much render the game and then run an AI pass over every frame, seems to be how it works. And then they had a few responses, looks like 8% saying they actually find it better than native. So that's the techpowerup survey on the topic. But again, I'm kind of interested in what does the average just person who isn't like an extreme enthusiast think about this kind of thing. It makes me wonder if I could actually like survey my high school students, just give them some of the like DLSS 5 on and off photos, but not tell them what's on and what's off. And I'll tell you right now, the vast majority of my high school students don't know what DLSS is, let alone DLSS 5. And maybe I could just ask them, like, if you were playing a video game, which of these images would you prefer? Just pick your favorite. And then maybe I could get an idea of what just a complete, like, casual, some of them aren't even gamers audience would think. I don't know. It's interesting thought. I don't know if I'll be able to actually do that. But anyway, this also caught a bunch of headlines. This is about a week old now, but you're judged by serving the core. The Take-Two boss talks why GTA 6 arrives on console first and PC second. In other words, basically saying that their core audience is console. They want to focus on that. They'll deal with PC after that. And then he's like, that really this console's their core audience. Now, in some of the leaked financial information, because Rockstar did get like hacked or something a while back, and I think some of their financial reports were published, you can see that they make just insane amounts of money on GTA 5 microtransactions, that it's the GTA Online stuff. And the vast majority of that money is coming in off of console. Now, they still make a lot of money off of PC too, but like proportionally, console is absolutely gigantic. So, I mean, I guess I understand that. I just hope it means that when we get the PC version, that it's a very good quality port. Now, I probably should have thrown this in closer to when I was talking about the Steam machine, but I'll throw it in now. AMD appears to have readied a full open source HDMI 2.1 support for Linux. This is a really big deal because there have been licensing issues with the HDMI 2.1 standard not being open, getting it to run properly with Linux. It looks like AMD has got that sorted out. And that was probably because of Valve helping out and pressuring all of this because of, with the Steam Machine coming out, it's running Linux. It has HDMI 2.1 hardware, but if the Linux software struggled to run that, that would limit the capabilities of the system pretty considerably. And so I think it's good news that this appears to have been sorted out. Now, also, more evidence that the Steam Machine is coming because Valve game console shipments and SteamOS update are still, again, pointing that Steam Machine is probably coming soon. So very, very likely that we will be seeing Steam Machine soon-ish, but we still don't have a date exactly on that. Now, as a competitor to the SteamOS situation, Microsoft has enabled Auto SR preview on ROG Xbox Ally X for docked play. Now, Auto SR is kind of interesting in that it's a super resolution technology, but not one that integrates into games. It's one that really is kind of a post-processing upscaler. And I thought it would be kind of terrible, and I haven't actually tested it out myself in person, but I was looking up tests of it, and Digital Foundry did have a look at it a while back. But initially, it just ran on ARM systems on Windows, which was kind of weird. But when they tested it there, it actually did a pretty good job for what it is. So that's interesting. So I'm curious how this plays out and if they're planning on anything like this happening on like their Project Helix, this being a feature for that, question mark? Because it seems like a lot of their developments on the Windows gaming stuff seems to be in preparation for Project Helix, which will be at least more PC-like than previous Xbox consoles. All right, that's the news that I've got for you today. Don't forget to check out jawood.gg and use code OWEN10 for $10 off your first purchase using the sponsored link in the video description and or pinned comment. Hope all of you have an excellent day.